Woohoo! Another work week is over for me. Now my creative projects can begin again. Feels very good to have done that. I'm a little exhausted, but I'm also happy it's over, and I'm looking forward to 4 days off in which I can do all kinds of creative projects. Very nice. Starting tomorrow, hopefully, with the next installment of the DAS Studio 101 series. I like it. Let's keep it up. Let's keep the momentum going. Viewers really liked the previous installment about mesh lights. And so tomorrow I'm going to talk about image-based lights. At least the stuff I know about image-based lights in DAS Studio. It's one of those things, like I received a couple of comments there from, oh yeah, but you didn't explain this and you didn't explain that. And that is true, because it's a getting started tutorial. It's not about explaining everything about every detail of the application. It is a getting started guide after all. So yes, you must keep that in mind, because it's easy to make one part literally an hour and a half and you think, yeah, that'll really overload newbies. It was supposed to be a getting started guide, and that is what I'll continue doing. I had a really inspiring chance meeting yesterday I wanted to talk to you about with a man named Manuel, and it was quite funny. I took a break fairly early in my shift yesterday just because I felt like it, and that's kind of interesting to give into these impulses. Usually I pace myself that I work an hour and a half, then I have a 10-minute break, and then I work another hour and a half, then I usually get a 30-minute break. Kind of the app puts that in place so I don't have an influence on when that happens, and then in the afternoon I take another one. So 2 breaks, between 1 and 2 breaks depending on how long we work, we get to take at our own pace. And then we also get a 30-minute break that is unpaid, but it's kind of, the app gives it to you if and when it feels like it. So once an order is done and you're just about halfway through a shift, then, and you work over 30 minutes, you work over 4 hours, I think, then you get a 30-minute break. And it's some kind of, whatever algorithm there's, I never really understand it, and none of us have any idea when and how we get breaks. It's just, at one point the app will say you're on a break, but oftentimes I feel like I want a break a little earlier than that. And so yesterday I gave in after about an hour into my shift, and I felt like I wanted to have a sit down, grabbed a coffee, sat down in the coffee shop, and there's Manuel. So Manuel and I have met a few weeks ago, also on the off chance. It was a slow day. I was sitting there having coffee. I do have a lot of coffee, like today. So I had coffee, and I was sitting at a little table, and I believe he's a construction worker, and he was coming in with 2 of his colleagues and said, hey, can we crash your table, because there's a few of us, we just want to have lunch. And I said, of course, I don't mind, I'm just sitting here, welcome, share my table. So it was very nice. We just chatted, but other than that, minded our own business. They were having lunch, and I got an order and I left. But it was one of those meetings where you think, hey, this is nice. It's like, it's what you do with nice people. You just break bread. You just share a moment. It's nice when that happens. You acknowledge one another, and it's just I'm making a point of that because it doesn't always happen anymore these days, and especially in larger cities, that's not something you get to experience very often. I mean, in London this never happened. You mind your own business, you do not look people in the eye. That's just, you do that, you look for trouble. And it's kind of nice to give into that impulse and say, hey, I don't know you, but how you doing? How's life treating you? And you just have a moment and you have a coffee together. So we had those a few weeks ago, and so yesterday I took my break, and there's Manuel sitting there with his 2 construction worker colleagues, and I said, may I join your table, because I happen to be in the neighborhood. I've got 8 minutes until my break's over. Why don't I enjoy my coffee with you guys? So his colleague comes back with a big box of Twinkies. Those are like little chocolate covered cake rolls. And he says, why don't you join us with a Twinkie? And I thought, wait, that's really nice. So while they were having cake and coffee and I had my coffee, I thought that's great. Maybe I'll have a Twinkie, join you guys and do that. So out of the blue, Manuel says, so how you doing? Do you believe in God? And I said, it's a good question. I don't really know. And he goes, oh, are you a doubter, or are you having questions, or how are you? And I think this is not how he asked it. It was the moment started a little bit different. It was just we just acknowledged through some kind of gesture. Oh yeah, that was it exactly. I think I sighed, and I said, in 10 minutes I have to get back to work. And he says, don't knock it, something like that. Don't bemoan it, be grateful that you have it. And I said, amen to that, brother. That is absolutely right. I do like the fact that I have a job, and even though I don't like particular aspects of it, it's actually very nice to have it. That's how it started. So that's how we got into this do you believe in God thing. And I said, I wouldn't say I'm a firm believer, a churchgoer, that sort of thing. I do believe in something, and some people call it God. I'm not sure what I call it. I guess I call it the universe. I'm not sure if I have a particular terminology for that, but we chatted a little bit about that, and in so doing I said, well, it's hard not to believe, and told him my cancer story, that I said, this is really how I found that there is something there, like a connection with the church, and about the fact that in my darkest hour, where the chemo didn't work, and that first hospital said, hey, we can't treat you anymore, and my neighbor said to me, do you want to come to church with us? Why don't you drop by? We've got this little outpost of the Calvary Church here in Miami Beach. If you're feeling down, you may get some positive vibes out of it. And this is what we did, and it was very, very difficult that morning. So it was literally that nice gesture of them saying, why don't you just join us, and maybe you get something out of it. I was thinking, I have nothing to lose. That's absolutely true. Hospital said I'm going to die and they can't treat me, and goodbye. And that was it, really. And we were literally at our lowest point. And up until that very Sunday morning, I wasn't really, the idea kept going round and round in my head. So I said to Julia on that morning, literally an hour before it started, hey, I think I want to go. And it was terribly difficult to get there to that church, but we made it. And once we arrived, never having been to an American church congregation like that before, it was wonderful, the warmth and the welcome of seemingly random people plus our neighbors. So we didn't really know anyone there, but it was really nice to be welcomed in with open arms into a total group of strangers who were praying for us. And the way that young priest was praying for us was literally, they took us all in a circle. We stood shoulder to shoulder and we hugged each other. And he was saying, dear Lord, dear Jesus, thank you so much for another wonderful day on this beautiful planet. Please give Jay and Julia all the strength and energy that they need to get through this. Give them all the power that they need. Sort out everything like health insurance and all the other financial things. And he said a lot of other things that I don't remember, sadly. And it felt absolutely wonderful. And what was so amazing about it is that was kind of the moment at which something dramatically changed in this whole journey. So from literally having no hope at all to finding the second hospital, to finding my other doctors, and to finding hope again, and ultimately a treatment that completely cured me. So that was one of those moments on the journey where it became obvious that this wasn't just a chance meeting. Something more happened there that was, that kicked off a journey. That was that moment in that church. And yeah, so that's what I told Manuel. And funny enough, that chapter of the church is no longer where it was. And our neighbors are no longer in the building either. So it's almost like this whole meeting, this whole thing, this is like one of those mysterious way stories that happened at the right moment at which we needed it. And then once we were on the right track, it was it was no longer necessary for it to be there. That's kind of how I see it anyway. So highly inspiring. And I told him that, and I said, if you see things like that, and then the other story about the fact that once they started me on the immunotherapy, which was like another super low point at which we weren't sure how am I going to survive after months of artificial nutrition and all that, when they started me, when I could barely walk, and they started me on this immunotherapy treatment, and from within 2 months from being able to not walk at all, or like only very, very painfully slow with a walking stick and all that, my wife had to roll me around the hospital in a wheelchair within 2 months of these treatments to being fit again to jump on my bike, the one that got stolen, that previous bike, and cycling the distance from here to Mount Sinai Hospital. Unbelievable. And I said to him, well, it's hard not to believe in something. It's very hard to put that down to medical coincidence or medical science or coincidence or whatever you want to call it. If you see things like that, it changes your life. It's very hard not to believe in something, and it doesn't matter what you call it, really. I believe I think we're all talking about the same thing, like some kind of big energy that is with us, that many have learned to tap in, and it's been called many, many names over the years, and I'm thinking that is probably what people call God, and I may call it something different. I haven't really formed an opinion. I don't want to put a label on it or say yes, that is that. It is just a bit too big and too powerful for me. I do certainly believe in something, and that is what we talked about. And so it was just one of those interesting, inspiring meetings that you think, hey, I think we've recognized one another in what we just talked about. And it was really nice to hear his experiences. And he says, one of the things that he finds very inspiring is that when potential obstacles come along in your path, that in his opinion, God doesn't give you more than you can handle. And I thought that was an interesting idea, that he says, yeah, sometimes it feels a little bit too much, but it's actually not, and it's just something that I refer to as a test. And he agreed with that. He said, yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it, a test, like a puzzle that needs to be solved. And rather than solving human artificial puzzles, which may or may not be too difficult or too easy, he says, well, the things that God gives you are something that is very challenging, but it's never going to be more than what you can handle. It could be the deepest, darkest fears, or could be something completely different. And then he left. And it was the other inspiring thing that we said at the end of the meetings. I didn't know his name, he didn't know mine. And I gave him my card and told him, hey, I've written this book about this whole journey, and maybe you find it inspiring. And he said, oh, that's amazing, that's really cool. And so we parted ways, and he said, what's your name? And I said, oh, I'm Jay, but it doesn't really matter what my name is. And he said, yeah, you're right, actually, it doesn't matter. So it's a funny way to part. And he said, yeah, I'm Manuel. And I said, yeah, and that too doesn't really matter, because in that moment we were just two eternal beings together on the same plane, sharing a moment. And what we call humans in that moment in time doesn't really matter. But it was just this moment of mutual recognition and sharing that. That was nice. That was really nice. And I thought I wanted to share this moment with you. And I also wanted to make sure I don't forget about it.